Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Always great to collaborate with the Semrush team and super excited to be here and chat with you all today. I'm in Canada and I'm going to start this presentation very, very Canadian. I am going to start by apologizing. I am going to apologize on behalf of all of the gurus, on behalf of all of the marketers, all of the thought leaders, all of the people who create content online for the past decade plus have preached at the top of their lungs that if you create blog posts, you will be successful at SEO, at content and marketing, and the world will be yours. I apologize. And I apologize because circa 2014, when I had no hair, no kids, no grays, didn't even need glasses, I was on stage at events preaching the exact same thing, telling brands left, right, and center, if you create content, you will win. All you have to do is produce, 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 produce. And it turned out that a lot of people listened. They ultimately got to a point where they looked at keywords and they said, we're going to create a content calendar exclusively rooted in this. And that's it. That's our content strategy. When in reality, all they had was a blogging content calendar. Today, even with the news that just came out yesterday around personalized AI and having the ability to have a tailored search experience, more than ever before, folks, we have to shift our thinking. We have to say no to that circa 2014 when we were told, just create content, write a bunch of blog posts, and the world will be yours. We need to put that to the wayside and start to actually embrace this concept of a media company, but not the media companies that we might all come to mind right away, like a newspaper. Oh, we need to think like newspapers. No, that's not what I'm saying. We all have seen the demise of a lot of newspaper companies over the last few years. That's not what I'm talking about. And some of you will attest to that. Like, you've produced content, you've created content, and the results have been meh or they've been decent, but they haven't really taken the world by storm. And oftentimes I will give a talk, and I run a content marketing firm. Like, this is what we do for brands every single day. And people will say, Ross, I've been listening to your podcast, I've been listening to your content, I've been reading your blog, and I'm trying to produce good content that drives results, but it's not working for me. Well, there's usually one simple factor, and that is that people forget to market the content that they're producing. The industry and the concept of content marketing is a two-word industry, but for some reason, we have forgotten that. We lost sight of the fact that it's not just a game of pressing publish on content. And over the last year and a half, we saw that at the worst scenario, the worst case had happened. I seen blog posts that were completely Control C, Control V from ChatGPT connected to the back end of their CMS and publishing content that was mediocre and made the internet not so great. And as a result, the internet and Google has responded. And that's what we saw yesterday with the big announcement. But what should you do? You need to think about how to weave a web, folks. Like, weave a web for your content. When we think about a media company, we should think of brands like MasterClass, who are producing videos, who are producing YouTube videos, who are distributing from an individual core asset, which is essentially like a course. Or in your case, it might be a blog post, it might be a video, whatever. You start with something that is evergreen, which is great content. And then you find ways to fragment, distribute, repurpose, repackage that on multiple channels, because now, more than ever before, the activities that are happening off of SEO and outside of just Google matter and influence your brand. All right. If you do a search for some of the most popular queries in the world today, you'll notice that there's fragments from Reddit, there's fragments from YouTube, there's fragments from forums and review sites, all showing up in that search experience. And if you think about yourself as a human, you might also realize that you don't just use Google when you're looking for things. I use TikTok to find out what I should wear. I use Instagram to find out what I should be doing with my kids on the weekend. I'll use Facebook search to find out what events are happening locally. I'll use TripAdvisor if I'm planning a trip to Vegas or Barcelona or Norway. All of these things come into the mix, and we have to recognize that this is a shift. Now, I don't want anyone to leave this session and go back to their team and say, Ross Simmons said that we shouldn't blog anymore. No. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we need to create things that are worth distributing. And AI makes that easier than ever before. We need to optimize our content, create valuable content, and AI and tools like Semrush are making it easier than ever before to do this in a way that actually drives results. But at the foundational level, We at Foundation have this philosophy that we call the 4 E's. And the 4 E's are at the heart of every asset that you produce. And if you can't say that the pieces of content, the ebooks, the guides, the blog posts, the landing pages, the white papers, the webinars, the podcasts, if they don't fall into one of these categories, and if you can combine multiple, chef's kiss, even better, right? Educational content, engaging, entertaining, and empowering content. These are the 4 E's. And the 4 E's are at the starting point for everything that you do. If you're going to write a piece of content, ask yourself, will this educate my audience on us, on how to solve a problem, on how to achieve something? Will it educate them on what differentiates us versus the competitor? Is the content that we're putting out on LinkedIn engaging? Are we sharing actual like stories, or are we just trying to get people to sign up for webinars all the time? Are we just trying to constantly get people to give us their information to download a guide, right? Or are we engaging? Are we inspiring a conversation amongst our audience and our community? Or are we entertaining them? And you might say, we're not a funny brand. You don't need to be funny to be entertaining, right? You can be inspirational to be funny. You can provide people with simple references to things that are happening in culture and around them. When you're thinking about the media, what's going on in the media in your niche and in your industry? Has there been new regulations, new laws, new announcements, new platforms, new tools that you could talk about? And then do so in a way that's entertaining and keeps people inspired. Those are all ways to be entertaining. And then finally, empowering content. This is one that I will say a lot of brands do really well when it comes to internal team. They do really a good job at empowering their internal teams and celebrating them on social. But how about you empower your customers? How about you empower the people who you want to serve, right? And create content that falls into these buckets. And if here today you all say, Ross, I'm with you, I hear you, and I'm aligned, then great. You're doing it. You're doing exactly what you should be doing, right? Creating great content. But now more than ever, we have to distribute that content through a wide range of different channels, right? And we have to think about the buyer's journey. And the buyer's journey in B2B has changed quite significantly, but it's changing everywhere. Even if you're in D2C, right? Like we do a lot of work recently in higher ed. And even the way that students are making a decision on what university they should go to has changed dramatically than what it was when I went to school. When I went to school, it was just my parents telling me where I'm going to go, and that's where you go. But now you have TikTok influencing, you have Reddit influencing, you have YouTube influencers. There's so many moving pieces, right? And what you need to be thinking about is how your content, how your story is showing up throughout this journey. And the best way to do that is through distribution and applying AI across all of it. These are efforts, and the ideas that I'm going to share today are some of the models and some of the frameworks that we've used to work with some of the top brands in the world. But there are also strategies that not only have we used to apply them and work with them as clients, but also to get them as clients, because we eat and drink the same philosophies ourselves at Foundation. When I have a podcast, it doesn't just go live and then kind of reach people. I was able to reach 100,000 downloads because I embraced this methodology of repurposing it, of resharing it, of taking a blog post and turning it into a thread on X and turning that same podcast into a podcast or a blog post. So you're repurposing that content in different formats in different ways. You're taking it and then submitting it into communities like Hacker News or Reddit, so that content is being dispersed through there. And the results out of this effort has been wild, right? We've reached tons and tons of people on the back of this type of effort. It's the same strategy that I used to make Create Once, Distribute Forever, my book, a #1 bestseller. And it's through this effort and the framework that I want to share with you today that I think all of you can be super successful. And it might sound basic at first: research, creation, distribution, and optimization. But I truly do believe that this framework can change the way that you operate. Let's get tactical with this. So the first thing that I would recommend that you think about is, where is your audience spending time online? Are they on Reddit? Are they on Quora? Are they on Facebook? Are they on LinkedIn, YouTube? What channels are they spending time on? You need to do that research. And what I'm seeing, and a lot of folks tend to like have these like moments of drifting off when I start to talk about Reddit, but we're starting to see Reddit show up more and more in the SERP, more and more in channels. And I would say and argue like there's a reason why some of the top brands in the world are starting to invest in Reddit, because they see that this is a channel now that is actually one of the top 2 visited websites in the US, and that becomes an opportunity for you, right? But embrace this motto of create once, distribute forever. And when you have that, you're more likely to be able to scale your content engines across all the different channels with success and with immense value being delivered to the brand and to the business. So, what I encourage you to do is to start to think like this media company, which is Disney, where Disney presses publish on a great asset, a great movie, and then it distributes it through a wide range of different channels and a different areas of the business. So it goes out to TV, it has music, it has soundtrack, it has publication, it has comic strips, it has all of those things. But for you, where you need to start is by researching your audience. And one of the best tools, again, and I know this sounds biased, but it's true, is Semrush. I find that Semrush is a great place to start when you are trying to figure out what your audience wants, what they're looking for, and what potential opportunities exist for you to find content. One of the features that I've been using a lot with the team is Topic Finder. So you can tap into the Topic Finder tool and you can simply type in a topic that is relevant to your niche. So me as the person who runs a content marketing firm, we want to be known for content marketing. So you're able to identify that your audience's location is in the US, and you can say we want to find topics that are related to content marketing. And then the tool does the analysis live in real time to identify what is going on in the market as it relates to keyword volume, as it relates to like the demands and interests of your customers, to give you ideas on stories and topics that might make sense to create. And it gives you additional insight because in this content is combining informational and commercial intent. So you're starting to really understand why creating this piece might be valuable to you. And then you can start to see it at scale across marketing companies in different regions, social media strategy, and this should provide you with insight and ideas on what it is that you could create, not just because you think it might work, but because you have now validated this concept that there are true insights and opportunities to go after these phrases because of the volume that is showing up in SEMrush, and you can use that to ensure that the content that you create is gold. Now, what I also love about this is that there's also a feature called Content Shake. And we've been using Content Shake for a while now. And with Content Shake, what you're able to do is really start to get closer to that end result for ideal content. So creating a content brief has now become easier than ever before using a tool like Content Shake, where I can say, all right, I want to create a piece that's talking about PPC companies or any of these other topics that have been found in SEMrush. And then I can get a series of secondary keywords that I want to build on. And then from this, I can start to build out a structure, a brief, and an actual asset. There's another feature within that I would also encourage you to think about using when you're in that ideation stage, which is the keyword strategy builder, where you can simply go in here, you can type in a keyword or upload multiple keywords, seed keywords, and ask it to create a list. And in a matter of minutes, you're going to be met with a keyword strategy with pillar pages, sub pages, and the structure that it should be built in. This feels like magic because back in the day, you had to do this manually. And I can remember going into spreadsheets and toying through this by hand for quite some time. But now you can do it at scale very quickly. And that's where the gold lives. Now imagine though, instead of just relying exclusively on the data, you combine that with going to a site like Reddit and looking for what we call content market fit, where you're going to type in maybe your own website domain or competitor's domain, and you're going to hit the enter button. And you're going to start to see the top content that people actually care about on Reddit. And what this gives you is additional insights into these are the stories that people care about that this website, 99% Invisible, ever published. So based off of that, how can I use this as an insight to say, all right, maybe we need to create content in this same lane or on a similar topic? And what else can we develop from there? And I know some of you have heard me say Reddit a few times and you're already freaking out because you're like, why are we talking about Reddit? Like Reddit is not a place for marketers. In fact, Reddit is two things. One, a great place for marketers to listen. If you're not listening to hear what people are saying about your brand on Reddit, you're missing out. But two, it's also becoming a great marketing channel. And this is showing up more and more in the SERP than ever before. If you type in most queries and queries across industries, you're going to start to see Reddit showing up time and time again directly in the SERP. And there's strategies that you can implement to ensure that you're showing up here positively and that you're creating content that ranks in here by being active in these communities and showing up there. For example, on Reddit, when people ask simple questions like, hey, what are things that I should learn as a marketer? I go in as Ross Simmons and I'm very transparent with who I am. And I give them some insight around these are the skills that you should work on. And of course, I'm recommending, in addition to this, a little bit of a tip on, hey, you should check out this book, Create Once, Distribute Forever. So there is value, folks, in engaging and responding in Reddit because people are probably talking about your brand right now as you know it. And if you're not convinced, let me share with you some additional Semrush data that validates this idea. And that is that across transactional and commercial intent keywords, there are 5.7 million queries that you could type into Google today that are transactional or commercial intent, where Reddit is ranking for that content. That's a lot of content. And 126 million visits are being captured by Reddit for just transactional and commercial intent queries. So, again, the reason why I tell you this is simple, folks. As much as marketers might not love Reddit, it validates that idea that amidst all of the change that we're seeing with ChatGPT, with Claude, with Perplexity, with all of these tools becoming also a part of the search experience, maybe we should be thinking about how we're influencing Reddit content. Because again, if you look at Wirecutter, which was for years one of the juggernauts in the listicle space and affiliate worlds, they have millions of keywords that they rank for. And look who their number one competitor is. It's Reddit. Reddit is showing up everywhere. So I'm not going to spend too much more time talking exclusively on why this makes sense, but here's another call out. In SEMrush, you can do this type of an analysis of your own brand versus reddit.com. And I would encourage you to do that type of an analysis yourself just to see what queries you're competing with Reddit on. And you might find that it's none. You might find, you won't find that it's none. You might find that it's low. But from there, you can start to create a strategy around, okay, we need to show up for these. And the reason why, folks, Reddit and this type of thing makes sense is because the belief in the data is suggesting that by 2026, the LLMs are going to be trained on everything that exists on the internet, right? This is the expectation. And when this happens, you have to ask yourself, what's the sentiment, what's the story, and what's the message that is going to be perceived by the LLMs about my business, my organization, and what we're doing today? The LLMs are already licensing data, and the LLMs are already scraping data left, right, and center from these tools. There's a solution that we've used in the past called Profound that looked at Perplexity, and Perplexity's number one source for content was Reddit. Folks, more than ever before, you need to be thinking about how you can distribute your stories and spread your content on these different channels. When you look at March 2025 in this update from SEMrush, it's clear that Reddit is ranked as the 5th most popular website in the US in terms of getting visits. And the top two don't really count when you're thinking about Google, because Google is in cahoots with YouTube, of course. So this is where the opportunity lies. Embrace that motto of creating once and distribute forever. So you now know, let's say you know where your audience is and you know what type of content they care about. You might already have content that you're producing, but what are you doing with it? Are you turning podcasts into video content? That's a massive opportunity. Are you taking your team status updates on LinkedIn or your organization status updates that are text-based and turning them into carousels? Are you turning those those white papers that you've invested thousands of dollars to produce, and are you resharing them, or do you share them once and then call it quits? So many times do I talk to executive teams and they talk about how they invested like 30K, 40K into a white paper with research and sometimes more than that. But those pieces are never promoted. They're never amplified. They're never repackaged. They don't turn those things into derivative content. And that's a massive mistake. If you create a white paper or some type of resource that is long form in nature, there's a lot of micro assets that should come out of that you could use to promote it, amplify it, and make it spread. But for many people, they just let it collect us. And that's a huge mistake. And one thing that we have also noticed recently is that LinkedIn.com as a actual URL is starting to show up in the LLMs a little bit more frequently as well. So remix your blog posts and have the author of those blog posts recreate it on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn article, because LinkedIn.com has the article section and that news section that is open for scraping and reviewing by the LLMs. So we would encourage you to think about that as well. Now, let's say you're getting ready to create and you're not sure where to start. I talked about this earlier, with the Semrush tool that kind of gives you that topical overview and gives you the ability to have the pillars. Um, this is gold for any brand, any marketer. Like, you now have the ability at your fingertips to do what would have traditionally taken an SEO anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. And you can now plug in some ideal keywords that you want to target. And then you can be met with a research backed, data driven cluster strategy around pillar and post content. And the pillar and post content that you are met with can now be created by your team. You can take this as a blueprint to say, these are the pieces that we need to create, and we want to do this at scale. And it's even segmented, best for your strategy, easy start, quick conversions, and more potential traffic. So it aligns with the goals that you might have for your business. This is where you can unlock some amazing returns. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. It will tell you exactly what to create. The tool will literally say, okay, you need to create these types of pieces. These are high potential. These are low potential. It will give you the volume estimates of these assets. And then that button on the right-hand side where you can create brief or content becomes your best friend. You can click that button and then in the matter of seconds, start to go down the path where you're able to create an actual brief. You could produce an article. And then in those situations, I would always still encourage people to have that human touch prior to pressing publish. But there is the opportunity to get it very close to ready to go live, right? And this is what's available now. And this is something that we've been using with our team. This is something that we've been using with partners. And the ability to get to a brief faster has never been more real. So like, for example, let's say I wanted to start to rank for PPC agency. You can use this tool, click a button, and it will give you, based off of an analysis of the SERP and what content you're competing with, what your ideal headlines are, what your introduction needs to be, all of the titles, all of those things. I can click another button and say, continue with this, and it will start to actually create that content, right? It will start to break down for me all of the different things that need to essentially make up my article. So me, as someone who actually knows PPC, this is where now I can apply my own expertise. I review this final asset as a first draft, and you pretend, what I like to do is pretend that an intern gave me this, and I'm going to apply my expertise, my genius, my understanding of the space directly to this piece and bring it to life. And here's one of the other things that you can do. You can upload your own brand voice, upload your own material. So for example, my book, Create Once, Distribute Forever, I uploaded the entire transcript to Semrush and allowed it to read my voice because I didn't have AI when I wrote the book. I wish I did. But it's written in my voice, typos and all of that. And from there, Semrush was able to train its voice on my book. So when it creates my content, it's able to use this as the starting point for every asset that I create. And I know some of you might be thinking, but Ross, I don't have a book. You don't need a book. You can upload a blog post. You can upload some social posts. You can upload micro assets to be trained on your voice. So the content that you produce in the future is aligned with that. So for example, let's get a little bit more tactical with how this works. I wanted to produce this blog post about PPC agencies, benefits and downsides, everything you need to know. But I also recognize that people want images. So I can take a section of that blog post and I can upload it to ChatGPT 4.0. And I can say, give me an image or describe a visual that would go into this paragraph. And then I ask it to design it and it brings it to life for me, right? And now I have the images that I can promote with it. And you can do that for every paragraph and be met with valuable content that is optimized with AI, with that expert eye on top of it. And it makes it easy for you to now create once and then distribute forever. Because this piece that I now prepared in the matter of an hour or two, that has rich images, has rich links, aligns with my pillar post strategy, I can now launch that to my email list, to my social media site, to my various networks. I can then take it further, and by distributing it into communities and channels and things like that, I can maintain my momentum by scheduling this content to be shared on social. I can use tools like distribution.ai to rewrite my content and turn it into social posts and all of those things. I can share it in Reddit, TikTok, Slack, Discord, all of those channels. I can repurpose it. You can start to really live that mantra and that idea of creating something once and distributing it forever so it doesn't collect dust. And if you're going to blog, If you're going to blog, you should turn these blog posts into other assets, right? Turn that blog post into an article on LinkedIn and turn that article on LinkedIn into a YouTube video, and then turn that YouTube video into an embed that is located in your LinkedIn. It becomes very meta, but it's all should be connected. And you can do this in advance, right? In advance, you can say, we're going to produce, like set up the systems within your org where people who are proposing a blog post are thinking with that proposal, how they're going to distribute it. Is there going to be a thread on X for this? Is there going to be a carousel that comes with this? Are we going to have someone engaged to do a social video? Are we going to incorporate this into our email newsletter? How are we going to amplify this thing that we're producing? Are we going to comment in Reddit? Are we going to do these things? All of that needs to be considered, right? And with all of that, you're able to kind of also tap into the power of AI to spread your content. You can use things like distribution.ai to distribute your blog posts. You upload it, and then in the matter of seconds, you're met with tweets, LinkedIn posts. You're met with content that you can share on Blue Sky, Mastodon, all of the different channels. And it, again, will match it all to your voice. And that's the power of AI today. You can take one asset, upload it to a tool like this, upload it to Semrush, whatever channels you want to use, and have the ability to spread this content, right? Like, let me give you an example of this. So for me, I'm active on things like LinkedIn, regularly producing content, and I'm able to generate 15,000 or so impressions by just putting up 3 posts in the matter of seconds, right? I put up a post that I create with AI, with ChatGPT. I write this post, I caption it, etc. But I'm able to schedule this in advance and promote it and drive more impressions, more reach, more inbound with a fraction of the time. And as we've been on here, I think I've had 2 posts going on X. I think I've had a post on LinkedIn, and it all happens in the background using these tools that I'm leveraging to create once and distribute forever. Folks, I know that right now it feels more chaotic than ever to be a marketer. In 2019, we had it so good, right? Like, we had it so good. Everything was smooth, everything was up and to the right. But you fast forward and we've got AI overviews, generative engine optimization. It feels like there's more chaos than ever before. And you might be wondering, how do I navigate it? Well, you navigate it by embracing first principles. Research your audience. Tap into the capabilities of tools like Semrush to understand where they're at, what keywords they're looking for, and even tap into some of the newer AI tools, like the AI Toolkit, which is one of my new favorite tools that I've been using in Semrush, where it allows you to get a sense of, like, what are people saying and asking in the LLMs about my brand, and it even does benchmarking across you and your competitors. That type of research being done up front is the starting point. And then once you've downloaded that research and you know your customers, you know what they want, you know the channels they're on, it's time to start creating content for them on the channels that they're spending time. Once you create those things, though, you can't just let them collect dust. You have to then distribute that content on different channels, through email, through social, through PR, through sponsorship, through email marketing, all of the things that we talked about today. And then you have to make sure that you optimize it. You don't want that content to collect dust. And this is the model that you embrace. This is the model that we all as a group need to commit to so we can put marketing back into content marketing. We've gone way too far down the side of thinking that a content marketing agency just writes blog posts. No, a great content marketing agency researches your customer, understands their pains, understands their problems, understands their needs, just like back in the day when we were like just getting started in the marketing Ogilvy days, and then using that to inform the playbooks that we run in the future. That's how it's done. That's how marketing should be done. And I break it all down in this book that I would encourage you to check out. It did make Amazon bestsellers for a reason. I think that you would love it. I think you would get a lot of value out of it. And I had to have at least one shameless plug, but I would encourage you to check out the book. But folks, remember, it is a new dawn. It's a new day. When you look at AI overviews, you look at the new personalized search experience that's going to be happening with Google, there's no question that the way that we market needs to change. The way that we approach things has to change. We can't exclusively think that by pressing publish on blog content, optimizing it for SEO, that we're going to win. We need to start thinking and gathering data around AI and what the AI believes is true, the sentiment of our brand from the eyes of an LLM. We need to be looking and listening to things like Reddit and UGC content. And we also have to admit that customers are kind of like onions. This is a Shrek reference where they have layers. And to these layers, sometimes they're on LinkedIn, sometimes they're on Facebook, sometimes they're on Reddit, sometimes they're on Blue Sky, sometimes they're on X, sometimes they're on Mastodon, sometimes they're on Snapchat. They're going to be dispersed across multiple channels. And because of that, we have to change the way that we show up every single day. But with that, it doesn't need to feel overwhelming. If you embrace the 4 E's, educational, engaging, entertaining, and empowering content, and you distribute that content relentlessly, I'm confident that you will come out of this thing better than you would have than if you hadn't heard this presentation today. So thank you so much. I would love to open it up to questions. If anybody has any, by all means, feel free to ask away. I'm an open book, happy to chat about anything that anyone would like to dive into further. Awesome. So Daniel asked for me to share a little bit more about the AI research tool that I mentioned. Happy to do that. So the AI research tool that I was talking about is relatively new, I believe, but it's one of my favorite features. It's the AI toolkit. And what you're able to do with this is I'm going to give you a quick glimpse into it in a second here. I'm just going to pull it up. Um, Here we go. All right. So here is, here's the experience. So you can log in here and you can say, I am Lululemon, for example, right? And I want to understand how the LLMs are perceiving Lululemon. And what it does is it gives you a snapshot of how the LLMs are thinking about this brand in particular. So in the men's market, you can get a deep understanding of, okay, the men's segment is underrepresented, competitors hold 60%. The overall sentiment, however, is pretty positive, 86.49% positive perception of Lululemon. Uh, they're giving insight into fabric-oriented storytelling as being an opportunity. So, like, there's a lot of queries about the fabric technology. Is there an opportunity for us to discuss that more? And then it does this analysis across market share distribution. So, um, what I believe essentially is happening is that it runs this analysis where it asks a series of questions to the LLM and then uses that to get a benchmark on how often is Lululemon the response. And based off of this, it says, okay, across your market, you represent 21% of the dialogue in your niche and in your specific area. Then also gives you this sentiment score. So it gives you an analysis of the sentiment associated with your brand versus others. Gives you a little bit of detail around the types of queries that are happening in the LLMs associated with that and how often you show up within them. And then from here, you have the key sentiment drivers, which is very interesting as well. So you can see here the brand strength factors, some of the things that are really standing out. But then it gets a little bit tactical for you, where you're able to even take on and see what are some of the strategic opportunities here? So it gives you short term, medium, and urgent opportunities that you can take advantage of. So creating a multi channel educational campaign highlighting the science and benefits of Lululemon's fabric. So people are asking the LLM oftentimes questions about the fabric, of course, right? Like it's on our skin. So people are asking questions about whether or not the fabric is good for you. They're asking whether or not it's going to give you the ability to excel when you're doing yoga, hot yoga, all of those things. And that presents an opportunity for them to own that narrative. It goes deeper and starts to talk about, okay, there's a lot of queries and questions talking about expectations around inclusivity and body positivity. So that becomes a mission maybe for Lulu to say, all right, we want to shift this narrative. Let's talk about it in a different way, those types of things. And then finally, aggressively advance communicate sustainability efforts. So are there people who are asking questions that are suggesting that maybe Lulu is losing some of its eco-conscious customers, and that presents an opportunity. So this is the type of analysis that you can get from it. You can go deeper in and start to see like a true full thought out brand report that breaks down like what's going on in the sentiment, what are some of the things that are showing up here. You can even test it based off of the different LLMs, so you can see that in Gemini, it's less frequently seeing Lululemon versus the other platforms, and those just become internal data points for you to think about and consider as you're building out your own LLM strategies.